You're under arrest. Come with us now.
Please, I haven't done anything wrong.
Sign here, Leo. It's a better life. Besides, this coat is genuine mink, and the winters here are unforgiving. My mother didn't look at me as she spoke. She was too busy admiring her reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing the collar of a coat that cost exactly $500. I was 12 years old, shivering on a curb with a single duffel bag, watching my father count a stack of 20s. He didn't look at me either. He was focused on the math, his thumb flicking through the bills with a practiced, oily greed. Behind them, the front door of the only home I knew was already locked. I wasn't being sent to a summer camp or a prestigious boarding school. I was being traded to my great-aunt Martha, a woman who smelled of mothballs and spoke only in cold proverbs about earning one's keep. My mother sneered as she tucked the receipt for the coat into her designer purse. You were always an expensive habit, Leo. Finally, you've paid for yourself. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I watched their taxi pull away, and in that moment I realized a fundamental law of the universe. To them I wasn't a son. I was an asset to be liquidated. I looked at the $500 mink coat as it disappeared around the corner, and opened my mental ledger. I didn't need a hug. I needed a pen. That was the day I stopped being a child and started becoming an auditor. 15 years later, the boy standing on that curb was a ghost. In his place stood a senior forensic auditor for the Treasury's High Wealth Task Force. My world isn't built on childhood memories. It's built on cross-reference spreadsheets and $10K filings. I don't need an apology to find closure. I need a paper trail. Great-Aunt Martha didn't raise me with affection. She raised me with a ledger. She taught me that every cent has a source and every lie has a signature. While I was spending my nights tracing offshore shell companies and identifying money laundering patterns, my biological parents were busy perfecting a different craft: the long-term grift. They thought that because they sold the child, they had deleted the evidence. They were wrong. In the world of finance, nothing is ever truly deleted. It's just moved to a different column. IT started with a routine Social Security sweep. A red flag popped up on a dependent care credit. Two people, Austin and Caroline, had been claiming a child tax credit for 15 consecutive years. My name, my Social Security number. They didn't just sell me for $500, they turned my identity into a recurring revenue stream. They were cashing in on a son they hadn't seen since the Bush administration. They didn't realize that the expensive habit had finally learned how to audit. Great-Aunt Martha died on a Tuesday, leaving the world exactly as she lived in it, organized, efficient, and entirely without apology. She didn't leave behind photo albums or sentimental trinkets. She left a diversified portfolio and a commercial deed to a block of real estate that had tripled in value since the 90s. The total valuation of the estate was $14,200,000. In the world of high-stakes probate, silence is a luxury, but greed is a broadcast signal. My biological parents, who hadn't sent a birthday card in 15 years, suddenly developed a very convenient memory. They didn't call to offer condolences. They didn't show up at the graveside. Instead, 48 hours after the legal notice hit the papers, I received a formal letter of intent from a strip mall lawyer named Marcus Vane. They weren't just asking for a handout, they were claiming the entire estate. Their argument was as bold as it was fraudulent. They claimed they had never sold me, but had merely placed me in Martha's care due to a temporary financial hardship. They alleged that they had maintained a continuous parental bond and that I, as a troubled adult, was now withholding their rightful share of the family wealth. I sat in my glass-walled office, watching the local news segment they had managed to bait. There was my mother, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than the $500 she traded me for. She looked into the lens and whispered about family healing and protecting her son's future. It was a masterpiece of performance art. She was painting a target on my back, but she didn't realize I was the one holding the ledger. I invited them to a settlement meeting in a boardroom that felt more like an operating theater. The air conditioning was humming at a steady, clinical 66 degrees, and the table was polished to a mirror finish. I sat at the head, my hands resting on a single manila folder. When Austin and Caroline walked in, they didn't see a predator. They saw a payout. They were dressed in charcoal gray, a coordinated costume of humble regret. "We just want to put the past behind us, Leo," Caroline whispered, her eyes darting toward the $14 million figure mentioned in the probate documents. My lawyer, a woman who specialized in corporate litigation and had no soul to speak of, slid a single document across the mahogany. "This is a family reconciliation affidavit," she said, her voice like cracking ice. "To release the trust's discretionary funds, the executors require a sworn statement. You must swear, under penalty of perjury, that you provided continuous financial and emotional support for Leo from 2011 to the present day." Austin didn't even read the fine print. He didn't see the legal tripwire hidden in paragraph 6. He grabbed the pen, his hand shaking with anticipation. "Of course," he muttered. "We never stopped caring. We were always there." He signed. Caroline followed, her signature a theatrical flourish of ink. They thought they had just unlocked a fortune. In reality, they had just walked into a cage and locked the door behind them. By swearing they raised me, they had just admitted that every single tax credit and welfare check they claimed in my name was part of a 15-year conspiracy of fraud. Gemini Sadie didn't touch the affidavit. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a single yellowing slip of thermal paper, The $500 receipt for a mink coat dated December 24, 2011. Beside it, I laid out 15 years of their fraudulent tax returns. You just swore under penalty of perjury that I was in your care, I said, my voice as level as a horizon line. But this receipt says I was worth a coat. And these filings? They say you've been stealing from the federal government using my social security number since the day you threw me out. Caroline's face didn't just pale, it structurally collapsed. Austin reached for the affidavit, his fingers twitching, but my lawyer pinned it to the table with a single manicured finger. That's a legal record now, Austin. You can't unsign a confession. I leaned in, the glass of the table reflecting the coldness in my eyes. You didn't walk into an inheritance meeting. You walked into a federal audit. I didn't call the police. I called the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS. They've been outside the door since you signed paragraph 6. The heavy oak doors opened. 2 agents in windbreakers stepped in, their faces as unreadable as a blank spreadsheet. As the handcuffs clicked over Caroline's designer watch, she screamed about being my mother. I didn't look up. I was already feeding the mink coat receipt into a portable shredder. The last evidence of my price tag turned into gray confetti finally. The ledger was balanced and I watched through the glass as the elevator doors closed on the only parents I had ever known. There was no dramatic music, no final apology, and surprisingly no satisfaction. Just the quiet hum of the building's ventilation and the sudden absolute stillness of a debt finally settled. I didn't feel like a victor in a war. I felt like a mathematician who had finally found the missing variable in a 15-year-long equation. I walked out of the high-rise and into the sharp midday air. For the first time since I was 12 years old, I wasn't carrying the weight of a $500 price tag. The millions in the bank didn't make me whole, the audit did. I had proven, through cold facts and hard ink, that loyalty isn't a byproduct of biology. It's a transaction of the soul, and theirs had been overdrawn for a long time that I hailed a taxi, not to a celebration but to the office. There are always more liars to hunt, and more receipts to find. But as the city blurred past the window, I realized I was no longer looking for my own reflection in the glass. I was finally looking forward.